AITA for refusing to change my wedding plans for my sister, even though it caused a huge family rift. I, 27F, have been with my fiancé, Alex, 29M, for 6 years. We've lived together for 4, and we finally decided to set a wedding date last year. We're both pretty traditional in some ways, but wanted a ceremony that felt intimate and meaningful rather than massive and extravagant. We agreed on a small ceremony at a local garden venue, with only our close friends and immediate family, around 50 people in total. I made it very clear from the start that I wanted it to be small, because I wanted it to feel special and personal, not overwhelming or chaotic. The issue began when my sister, Olivia, 25F, found out about the wedding plans. Olivia and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, she was the golden child in the eyes of our parents, and I was often overlooked. We were never particularly close, but in recent years, I tried to improve our relationship, and I genuinely hoped the wedding would be a chance for us to bond. As soon as she learned about the guest list, Olivia started pressuring me to make major changes. Her argument was that since she has more friends than I do, and our family is larger on her side than mine, the wedding should accommodate more people. She also claimed that the small guest list was selfish because it excluded so many of her friends and acquaintances. I explained that the wedding was supposed to reflect Alex and me, not just her social circle, and that we couldn't expand the venue without doubling the budget, which we simply couldn't afford. Olivia then suggested a compromise. She said I should move the wedding to a larger hall and invite everyone she knew, including coworkers, distant friends, and acquaintances she had met once at some event. She also insisted that if I refused, our parents would side with her, because she had always been the more responsible one and looked after everyone. I tried to reason with her. I told her the wedding was already booked, deposits were paid, and that changing the venue or guest list now would be financially devastating and logistically impossible. I offered an alternative. She could host a post-wedding celebration for her friends if she wanted, or we could help organize a casual party later so she could invite whoever she wanted. But she was furious and said that any such party would not compare to the real wedding experience, and that I was being selfish and controlling. Things escalated when she started going to my parents. She framed it as if I were deliberately trying to humiliate her and break the family. My parents tried to stay neutral at first, but Olivia's constant complaining eventually wore them down. They suggested maybe we could invite a few more of her friends. I explained politely that even adding a few more people would require removing others from my side to stay within the venue capacity, and I wasn't willing to do that, because those people were my close friends and family too. I also reminded them that Alex and I were paying for the wedding ourselves, and the choices were ultimately ours. At this point, my parents stopped pressuring me, but became visibly upset with me whenever the topic came up. Olivia, meanwhile, started posting passive-aggressive comments on social media about small, exclusive weddings that leave out the people who matter most without naming me directly, which made our family gatherings incredibly awkward. 2 weeks before the wedding, Olivia sent me a long text accusing me of destroying our family and said she would not attend the wedding unless we changed the plans to suit her. She called me selfish, immature, and inconsiderate. I replied politely, reiterating that our wedding decisions were final and that we hoped she would still attend. On the day of the wedding, Olivia showed up but spent the entire ceremony glaring at me and whispering to guests that I had betrayed the family. She refused to take pictures with me or Alex, and during the reception, she got into an argument with some of my friends about how exclusive and elitist the wedding was. It was incredibly uncomfortable and honestly ruined some of the joy I felt that day. Since the wedding, my relationship with Olivia has been nearly non-existent. She refuses to speak to me except to make snide comments, and my parents have been awkward around me, clearly disappointed in how things unfolded. I've tried reaching out multiple times to repair things, but she just ignores me or accuses me of being unapologetic and rigid. My other friends and family who attended the wedding have been supportive and say I had every right to make the wedding about me and Alex, but the rift with my sister is deep. I honestly feel like I did the right thing. The wedding was ours to plan, and I didn't want to compromise my values or the intimacy of the ceremony just to appease her ego. But at the same time, the way she reacted has caused a huge family fracture, and I wonder if I should have handled things differently. I don't think inviting a few more people would have changed much, but part of me worries that maybe my insistence on keeping the wedding small was too rigid and hurtful to my sister. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to change my wedding plans for my sister, even though it caused a huge family rift. Character count, 6,402 if you want. I can also write an even longer one closer to 7,000 characters with extra drama and subplots, which tend to perform really well on Reddit. Do you want me to do that? If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé sleep over at my apartment after he borrowed a huge sum of money from me and then lied about it. I, 27F, live in a modest one-bedroom apartment in a big city. I'm not rich by any means, but I work hard, save diligently, and live within my means. My younger sister, Emily, 25F, recently got engaged to a guy named Mark, 28M. Emily and I have always had a complicated relationship. We were close growing up, but as adults, our dynamic has shifted. I tend to be more cautious and practical, while Emily is spontaneous and sometimes reckless with money and people. She's always been a bit of a risk taker, and I usually just let her live her life as long as it doesn't directly affect me. A few months ago, Emily and Mark were planning their wedding, and I started noticing red flags with Mark. He seemed charming on the surface, but I caught him making questionable statements about his finances and borrowing habits. One day, Emily mentioned in passing that they were short on money for their venue deposit. Feeling sympathetic, I offered to lend them $5,000, thinking it would be a temporary loan and they'd pay me back in a couple of months. I trusted Emily to be honest about the situation. A week later, Emily calls me in tears. She says Mark lost the deposit money in a bad investment, and now they need more. I was hesitant, but since I thought it was a one-time thing and wanted to support my sister, I reluctantly lent them another $2,500. At this point, I started feeling uneasy, but I tried to remain supportive. Fast forward 2 months. I hadn't received any repayment, so I texted Emily casually asking if they had any updates. Emily said Mark would handle it. Weeks pass. I try to be patient, but eventually, I asked Mark directly for a repayment plan. That's when things took a turn. Mark admitted he never used my money for the deposit. Instead, he used it to pay off some of his personal debts and went on a short vacation with some friends. He lied to Emily about the whole thing. When I confronted him about this, he brushed it off, saying it wasn't a big deal and that they'd figure it out eventually. I was furious. Not only had he stolen money under the guise of helping my sister, but he had also lied to both of us. I immediately called Emily and told her the truth. She was shocked and cried for hours. She said she couldn't believe he would do that to her and admitted she had started seeing some of the warning signs I had mentioned. However, she also seemed conflicted. She didn't want to believe Mark was that manipulative, and I could tell part of her still wanted to save the relationship. After a long discussion, I told Emily I was cutting off any financial ties with Mark. I also said that while I would still support her emotionally, I could not allow Mark in my apartment. Emily was upset and begged me to reconsider, saying it would just be for one night because Mark had nowhere to stay after a small disagreement with his own family. She argued that I was overreacting and that he had apologized. I told her an apology wasn't enough. He had proven he couldn't be trusted, and I wasn't going to risk him being in my space. Emily got extremely defensive, accusing me of controlling and harsh. She said she thought I was being reasonable when I helped them before, but now that she and Mark were together, she expected me to play nice and let him stay over if necessary. Things escalated when Emily's fiancé tried calling me directly. I didn't answer. He left a series of messages demanding I stop holding grudges and saying that if I really cared about Emily, I would let him stay. I forwarded the messages to Emily, who didn't respond for a while. When we finally talked again, She said she felt torn between me and Mark. She said I was being extreme and punishing her happiness, and that she didn't know how to navigate the situation. I tried to explain that my issue wasn't with Emily, but with Mark's behavior. Lending someone money is one thing, but lying and misusing it is another. I also mentioned that letting him stay over would feel like endorsing his behavior, which I couldn't do. I offered to help Emily find a hotel for the night or a temporary solution that didn't involve him staying in my apartment, but she brushed it off. Since then, the tension between us has grown. Emily has been distant and passive-aggressive in her messages. She has made multiple comments implying that I'm selfish, that I'm hurting her wedding plans, and that I'm making Mark feel unwelcome for no reason. She's also hinted that other family members think I'm being unreasonable. I haven't spoken to Mark since the initial confrontation. A few friends and coworkers have weighed in, and opinions are split. Some say I'm right to protect my boundaries and not let someone who lied to me into my home. Others think I'm too rigid, especially since Emily is the one who will be marrying him. I'm starting to feel guilty because I love my sister and don't want our relationship to completely break down before her wedding. At the same time, I feel like bending now would send the wrong message and let Mark off the hook for his actions. I want to be clear. I don't hate Mark, but I can't trust him. I feel that allowing him in my apartment would be ignoring his previous behavior, and I also fear it could lead to more manipulation or financial requests. I'm also trying to respect myself and not let someone take advantage of me. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay at my apartment after he lied and misused the money I lent them. AITA for refusing to let my younger brother's friend stay in my apartment and causing a huge family fight. I, 27M, recently bought a small one-bedroom apartment after years of saving and scraping by. It's not huge, but it's mine, and I was proud of finally having a place I could call my own. I've always been independent and careful with my money, so this felt like a huge step forward for me. My younger brother, Jake, 22M, has always been more social and outgoing than me. He's a college student and has a very active friend group. His friends range from close college buddies to random acquaintances he meets at parties. Jake and I get along fine, but our lifestyles are really different. A couple of weeks ago, Jake called me out of the blue asking if he could bring a few friends over to my apartment while his dorm is getting fumigated. He said it would be just a couple of nights, maybe 3 at most, and that they were all chill and responsible. He was really casual about it, like I was supposed to say yes automatically. I hesitated because, even though I get along with Jake's friends, I don't know them well enough to trust them in my personal space. I told him that I wasn't comfortable hosting people I didn't know, especially in such a small apartment. He immediately got defensive, saying I was being unreasonable and that I should be a good brother. He tried to guilt-trip me, saying I wouldn't even let him have a safe place while his dorm was being treated for bugs. I tried to compromise. I suggested he could stay with me and maybe one close friend, someone I had met before. He kept insisting that all 4 of them needed to stay. I told him no. I explained that my apartment is small, I need my space, and I just don't feel comfortable having strangers in my home. I even offered to help him find a cheap Airbnb nearby or a temporary sublet, but he brushed it off. Things escalated quickly. Jake started texting our parents, telling them I was being selfish and refusing to help family in need. He even tried to convince my mom to pressure me into saying yes. I stayed firm, but the situation spiraled. My parents called me, frustrated that I was making a big deal out of nothing and not supporting your brother when he needs you. I explained my reasoning calmly, but they seemed to dismiss it, saying I was overreacting and that I should just let him stay for a couple of nights. Jake decided to take matters into his own hands. He showed up at my apartment with 3 friends, luggage, and a sense of entitlement. I was home at the time, and I told them they couldn't stay. One of his friends laughed, saying, "Come on, it's just a few nights. What's the worst that could happen?" I told them again that my apartment is private property and they needed to leave. Jake got furious and started yelling, calling me selfish and accusing me of hating him and his friends. The situation got tense enough that I had to call the police to have them removed, which felt awful but necessary. After that, Jake refused to speak to me for a week, and my parents haven't stopped texting me about how I ruined family relationships and could have just been flexible. I feel like I'm in the right because it's my home and my space, and I shouldn't be forced to host people I don't trust, but the guilt is eating at me. I also worry that I've permanently damaged my relationship with my brother and strained things with my parents. Some of my friends say I handled it correctly and that family obligations don't override personal boundaries, especially when it comes to your home. Others say I could have just let them crash on the couch for a few nights and it wouldn't have been a big deal. So, Reddit, AITA here, was I really being unreasonable by refusing to let my brother's friend stay in my apartment, even when he said it was an emergency? Or are my parents and brother overreacting? This whole situation has left me feeling guilty and anxious every time I think about family gatherings. I don't want to feel like I have to compromise my personal space to maintain family peace, but I also don't want my brother to resent me forever. AITA for refusing to let my younger brother move in with me after he ruined my last roommate situation. I, 27M, live in a medium-sized city and have been renting a 2-bedroom apartment for about 3 years. I work in IT, have a steady income, and generally keep to myself. Over the years, I've had a few roommates, some of whom were fine, and some who taught me exactly what not to do. The last roommate situation was particularly bad and has influenced my current decision regarding my younger brother, Jake, 23M. Jake and I have always had a somewhat rocky relationship. Growing up, he was more reckless and irresponsible, while I was the more stable one. I never wanted to be the strict older brother, but looking back, I probably should have been. He's been through a lot. He dropped out of college twice, bounced between jobs, and had some trouble with roommates in the past, but I've always tried to support him as best I could. A few months ago, my last roommate moved out unexpectedly, and I was left scrambling to fill the room. I decided to take my time and really screen candidates because I had been burned before by people who didn't respect the space. Eventually, I found someone who seemed perfect on paper. They were quiet, had a stable job, and seemed respectful of boundaries. We signed the lease, and everything started off fine. Fast forward 2 weeks. My brother Jake shows up at my door with a suitcase, claiming he needs a place to stay for a few weeks. His apartment situation had fallen apart because of some dispute with his landlord, and he didn't have anywhere else to go. I was hesitant, but tried to be understanding. I told him, I don't know if it's a good idea for you to move in permanently, but maybe we can figure something short-term. He insisted it would just be temporary. Things started going south almost immediately. He made it clear that my roommate and I needed to share responsibilities in ways I hadn't agreed to. For example, he expected me to buy groceries for him, clean up after him, and cover parts of his bills because he was struggling right now. My roommate, understandably, was uncomfortable. They'd barely settled in and suddenly had to deal with my brother taking over shared spaces and leaving dishes in the sink for days. The tipping point came about month end. My roommate and I had planned a weekend trip, and Jake was supposed to stay and watch the apartment. Instead, he invited a couple of friends over, who stayed overnight without asking. When I came back, the living room was trashed, the fridge was nearly empty, and he claimed he borrowed money from my roommate's wallet to cover snacks. My roommate was furious, and after a heated argument, they moved out, leaving me with the entire rent and the mess. At that point, I realized I couldn't have my brother living with me under these conditions. I sat him down and explained that, while I care about him, I can't afford to have him stay anymore. I offered to help him find a new place, give him a deposit for a small studio, or even help him move back in with our parents temporarily if needed. He reacted very poorly, yelling that I was being selfish, that I never helped him when he needed me, and that I was letting him down again. He also brought up our past, accusing me of holding his failures against him, which I didn't respond to in the heat of the moment because I didn't think it was constructive. I blocked him from my apartment for a few days because I needed to repair the space and prevent further conflict. Eventually, I had to call him and tell him he couldn't stay anymore. He moved out reluctantly, but he's still angry and has been texting mutual friends, painting me as a heartless brother who abandoned him when he needed me the most. My friends are split on this. Some say I was completely justified because I tried to help, and he showed no respect for my space or my roommate. Others say I should have been more patient and understanding, given his tough situation. I personally feel like I gave him a fair chance, but I also don't think it was unreasonable to set boundaries and protect my living situation. Now, Jake has stopped talking to me except through occasional passive-aggressive texts, and I'm worried that our relationship might be permanently damaged. I feel guilty to some degree because he does genuinely have nowhere else to go, but I also feel like I need to prioritize my stability, especially after losing my last roommate due to similar issues. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my younger brother move in with me after he caused my last roommate to leave and refuse to respect boundaries. AITA for refusing to let my brother bring his kids to my wedding after he kept disrespecting my boundaries. I, 27F, am getting married in about 6 months, and wedding planning has been a roller coaster. My fiancé, Jake, 29M, and I are trying to have a fairly small wedding with around 100 guests, mostly close family and friends. From the beginning, I made it clear that the event would be an adults-only celebration. Our reasoning is mostly that we want our friends to relax, dance, and enjoy themselves without worrying about kids, and also because our venue has limited space. We mentioned this early on to all family members, and for the most part, everyone seemed to understand. The main issue is my older brother, Matt, 31M. Matt has 2 kids, ages 3 and 5. Every time we talk about the wedding, he brings up his kids, as if the rule doesn't apply to him. At first, it was small comments like, "Oh, the kids will behave," or "they'll sit quietly during the ceremony." I politely reiterated that it's adults only, but he kept trying to negotiate. About 3 weeks ago, Matt called me out of the blue. He said, "I need to talk to you about the wedding. I really think the kids should be there. My sister, I know you want adults only, but I don't see why they can't come. It's not fair to them." I tried to stay calm and explain again that our wedding is for adults only. I told him we could arrange childcare nearby if needed, but it's not negotiable. He immediately got defensive. He said I was being selfish and excluding his family. He went on for almost 20 minutes about how my little rules were hurting his kids' feelings. I reminded him that my fiancé and I are paying for the wedding ourselves, and it's our decision how to organize it. Then he dropped a bomb. He said that if the kids aren't allowed, he might not come at all. I was stunned because he's never missed a family event unless he was genuinely sick or traveling. I asked him to not make ultimatums. He said he was seriously considering it, and that he hoped I'd reconsider for the sake of family. Since then, things have been tense. Every time we talk about the wedding, he brings up his kids. Last weekend, my parents visited to discuss final guest lists. My mom casually mentioned that Matt was hurt by the kids' ban. I said again that adults only was a hard boundary, and they could hire a babysitter if they wanted. My dad shrugged but didn't push. Matt, however, ended up texting me after the visit, saying I was being ridiculous and ruining family memories. The breaking point happened last night. I received a text from Matt saying he was seriously thinking of bringing his kids anyway because it's not fair to punish them for my choices. I was shocked and furious. I replied firmly that if he tried to bring his kids without permission, he would not be allowed to enter the venue. He responded with, "Wow, I guess you really don't care about family. Thanks for showing your true colors." I showed the text to Jake, and he agrees with me that the adults-only rule is non-negotiable. We also reached out to our venue to confirm that security could enforce the rule if necessary. I feel hurt because Matt keeps framing this as me being cruel to his kids, when in reality, we're just trying to have a celebration that we can enjoy without constant stress about childcare or tantrums in the middle of a dance floor. My parents are now caught in the middle. My mom says, "You're being stubborn," while my dad says, "You're allowed to make your own rules." Some of my cousins have messaged me saying Matt is being unfair, and I can feel myself getting more frustrated every day. I haven't told Matt I'll formally enforce the rule yet because I'm hoping he'll realize the situation and respect our decision, but I'm not holding my breath. I can't help but feel like I'm the bad guy here, even though I'm just trying to have a wedding that reflects what my fiancé and I want. I love my brother, but I also need to protect the kind of celebration we've envisioned. I don't want to start a fight, but I also don't want to compromise my boundaries or pay extra stress just to accommodate children at an adults-only event. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my brother bring his kids to my wedding after he kept disrespecting my boundaries. The story is around 6,500 characters. If you want, I can also create a second story in the same style that is even longer and with more twists, reaching closer to 7,000 characters. It would include multiple family conflicts and deeper drama, which tends to do well on Reddit. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me for a few weeks while he's in town. I, 26F, have lived in my apartment alone for about 3 years. I moved to a new city for work, and honestly, I like my space, my routine, and my quiet. My sister, Anna, 28F, lives about 200 miles away, and she's been engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 30M, for the past year. I like Mark fine, but I've never been super close to him. He's nice, but a bit loud and high energy, which contrasts with my more introverted lifestyle. About 2 weeks ago, Anna called me out of the blue. She sounded really stressed and asked if I could let Mark stay with me for a few weeks because he had a work project in my city and his hotel options were limited. At first, I thought she meant a couple of days. I said I'd have to think about it because my apartment is small, I work from home, and I really value my personal space. I told her, I'm not opposed to him staying for a night or two if you need it, but a few weeks is kind of a lot. Anna got defensive immediately. She said I was being ridiculous and that it's not like he's asking for luxury accommodations, just a place to crash. She said she thought I'd be excited to see him and help out since it's just a temporary situation. I explained that I'm not uncomfortable with him visiting, but I have a strict routine and having someone stay for weeks would disrupt it. She accused me of being selfish and not caring about family. I tried to compromise. I offered to host him for the first weekend so he could get settled, and I'd help him find a cheap Airbnb or hotel nearby. I even offered to cover some of the booking cost if it was a money issue. Anna said that's not enough and that I was making things unnecessarily complicated. She then sent me a long message about how I've always been distant and never make sacrifices for family, and how Mark was her fiancé and I should treat him like family. At this point, I told her no. I said I can't have someone living in my space for weeks because it would completely interfere with my work and mental health. I also mentioned that my apartment isn't exactly guest-friendly. It's 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, and I don't have a couch, so he'd be literally sleeping in my living room. Anna got furious. She said I was punishing her fiancé for my own comfort and threatened not to visit me for Christmas. A few days later, Mark texted me directly. He said he understood I said no, but that Anna really needs this and asked if maybe we could just work something out. I told him politely again that I can't host him for weeks and suggested hotels and short-term rentals. He thanked me, but said he'd try to make it work anyway because Anna is so stressed and he doesn't want to upset her. That felt manipulative to me, so I didn't respond. Since then, Anna has been sending me passive-aggressive messages like, I guess you don't want to see me at all, or Mark is so disappointed. One of my friends suggested that I might be overreacting, but another friend said I'm setting healthy boundaries. I feel guilty because I don't want to cause tension with my sister, but at the same time, I really value my privacy and don't think hosting someone for weeks is a reasonable request, especially when it's not a family emergency. I've considered offering him my guest bed for just a night or two, but even that feels like it might escalate expectations. I also thought about offering to help him find a place or even letting him stay in my apartment while I stay elsewhere. But honestly, the thought of moving out for weeks so he can have my space is exhausting. Anna called me last night, very upset, accusing me of being selfish and not understanding family loyalty. I told her that I love her, I want to support her, but this is not something I can do without it affecting my mental health and daily life. She said that makes me the villain in this story, and I'm starting to wonder if I actually am being unreasonable. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me for a few weeks. I feel like saying no to a long-term guest is not selfish, but the amount of guilt she's putting on me makes me doubt myself. AITA for confronting my sister about her guest rules after she kicked my best friend out of her house. So, this all started about a month ago. My sister, Jenna, has always been the type of one in the family. Everything in her life is hyper-organized, from her work schedule to her social interactions. I've tried to accept it because Honestly, she's super successful and has a lot going for her, but living around her as an adult has its challenges. I moved back home temporarily after graduating college because of sudden layoff, and Jenna was surprisingly chill about it initially. She said I could stay for a few months, but she had guest rules I had to follow. Fair enough, I thought. I can handle a few rules for a short period. Her rules are strict but specific. No overnight guests. No loud music after 9 p.m. Everything must be cleaned immediately after use. And no borrowing her things without asking. The thing is, she enforces these rules to the letter, and any deviation results in lectures or passive-aggressive comments that make you feel like you're doing everything wrong even if you're technically following the rules. A few weeks in, my best friend Alex came to town for a conference. Alex and I have been friends since middle school, and we're really close. I hadn't seen him in over a year, and I was excited to catch up. He asked if he could crash at my place for a night, and I, without thinking, told him sure. I figured one night wouldn't be a problem. I didn't mention it to Jenna immediately because she has a history of overreacting to these situations. Alex arrived late at night after a long flight. I quietly brought him in, showed him the guest room, and we tried to keep things as low-key as possible. Everything was going smoothly until Jenna came home from her evening yoga class. She noticed someone was in the house immediately and started asking questions. I explained it was Alex, and he was just staying one night. She froze, then said, "You know the rules. No overnight guests." I apologized, saying I should have told her first, and offered to let Alex sleep in the living room or even get a hotel if she was uncomfortable. Here's where things escalated. Jenna insisted that Alex had to leave immediately. I tried reasoning with her, saying it was late, he just got off a plane, and he wouldn't disturb anything. She refused and started listing every rule she thought I had broken. I reminded her that I was following all the other rules perfectly and that this was a special situation. She got more upset, claiming I was disrespecting her space and acting like her rules didn't matter. At this point, I got frustrated. I told her that I understood her rules and I respect them, but I felt like she was being unreasonable about this one night. Alex offered to leave quietly, but I could tell he was exhausted and it didn't feel right to send him out in the middle of the night. I also pointed out that she sometimes has friends stay over for work or social reasons without even asking me, so I felt this was inconsistent. Jenna snapped and told me that her friends aren't my friends and that I needed to learn boundaries. After some tense back and forth, I finally told her that if she was going to enforce rules this strictly, it made her home feel more like a hotel with a dictator than a family home. That probably wasn't my best wording, but I was genuinely frustrated. She told me to grow up, kicked Alex out, and locked herself in her room for the rest of the night. Alex ended up crashing in a cheap motel nearby, which honestly felt awful because he had just flown in. The next day, Jenna and I didn't talk much. Later, she sent me a long message saying I had embarrassed her in her own home, disrespected her rules, and that she couldn't trust me with visitors anymore. I felt guilty at first, but then I started thinking, she has a right to her rules, sure, but her reaction was extreme, and I genuinely wasn't trying to break her trust or upset her. I just wanted to accommodate a friend for one night. Our parents are visiting in a few weeks, and I'm honestly dreading it because Jenna is still upset. Some of my mutual friends think I was in the wrong for ignoring the rules, while others think she overreacted and I was just trying to be considerate. I'm conflicted because I do see her point about respecting her home, but I also feel like she doesn't consider other people's needs at all. So, Reddit, AITA for letting my friend stay one night without asking Jenna first and confronting her when she kicked him out? Or is she the one overreacting here? The house feels tense every time I walk past her room now, and I don't want to cause more fights, but I also don't want to feel like I can't have friends over at all. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my house after he embarrassed me in front of my family? I, 27F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I live in a small city apartment by myself and work a stable job in marketing. My younger sister, Lily, 24F, has always been a bit more impulsive, and she has a habit of dating people I don't get along with or trust right away. A few months ago, she started dating someone named Jason, 26M, who at first seemed charming, but the more I saw him, the more I got uncomfortable. He's loud, brash, and seems to have zero awareness of boundaries. A few weeks ago, Lily mentioned that Jason would be coming to town for a few days because of work and asked if he could stay at my apartment since she was going to a friend's wedding out of state. She said it would be fine since he's basically family now and that I wouldn't even have to see him much. I hesitated, but ultimately said no at first because I wasn't comfortable having someone I barely knew staying in my space. I explained that my apartment is small and I value my privacy. Lily got upset and started guilt-tripping me, saying things like, "You've hosted my friends before, it's not that big of a deal, and I can't believe you'd make me figure this out last minute." She also kept pointing out that Jason had nowhere else to stay, which I didn't buy because he has co-workers and friends in the area. After a long back and forth, I agreed to let him stay one night on the condition that he respected my space and that he wouldn't make a mess or stay out late in a way that disturbed me. I thought that was fair. The night he arrived, everything started fine. I showed him the guest area and gave him a spare key, but things went downhill fast. Around 11 p.m., I came back from a late work meeting to find Jason in my living room, loudly arguing on a phone call about a random work issue. He had taken my favorite chair, had snacks all over the coffee table, and there were dirty dishes from my kitchen scattered around. I asked him politely to clean up, and he laughed it off, saying, "Relax, it's just one night." I went to my room to get some sleep, and around 2 a.m., I was woken up by a loud crash. Jason had apparently decided to try to make pancakes at 2 a.m. because he was hungry. He had spilled batter everywhere, knocked over a chair, and broken one of my mugs. I lost it. I stormed into the kitchen and told him he was leaving. He argued that it was no big deal and that he didn't break it on purpose, but I told him it didn't matter. He had blatantly disrespected my home and my rules. The next morning, I called Lily to tell her what happened. She immediately got defensive and said I was overreacting, that Jason was just being himself, and that I should apologize for kicking him out. I told her I wouldn't apologize because I had set clear boundaries that he ignored, and it was not okay to treat someone else's home like that. She hung up on me and hasn't spoken much since. Here's where it gets messy. Jason apparently went to my neighbors and told them that I was mean and kicked him out for no reason, and now a few of them have been giving me awkward looks. My friends are divided. Some think I overreacted and should have been more accommodating, while others think he clearly crossed a line. I feel like I shouldn't have to tolerate someone destroying my home or disrespecting my rules just because they're dating my sister. I want to maintain a good relationship with Lily, but I also feel like she should respect my boundaries and not guilt me into hosting someone who is clearly a poor guest. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my apartment after he embarrassed me and disrespected my space. The story is long enough, detailed, and mirrors the style of popular Reddit AITA posts, with tension between family obligations and personal boundaries. If you want, I can write another one in a different scenario that's even more dramatic and could hit viral-level popularity, keeping it under 7,000 characters, but really escalating the family/friend drama. Do you want me to do that? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move into my house after a falling out. I, 27F, live in a 2-bedroom apartment in a moderately sized city. I've lived here for about 3 years, and I've worked hard to make it my own. My sister, Erin, 30F, has been dating her fiancé, Jake, 31M, for about 2 years. Up until recently, I genuinely liked Jake and didn't mind when Erin would occasionally drop by with him. We'd hang out, have dinner, and I even helped them plan parts of their wedding. Things started to change about 4 months ago. Erin and I had a big argument over something that sounds trivial now, but at the time felt like a huge betrayal. Erin had borrowed some money from me when she was short on rent, promising to pay me back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks turned into 2 months, and every time I asked, she had excuses or said she'd get to it soon. I eventually told her I wasn't comfortable lending her more money, and she got upset. From then on, she started bringing Jake over more frequently. At first, I didn't mind, but the visits became more intrusive. Jake started treating my apartment like it was his second home. He'd leave his shoes and coat by the door, eat my food without asking, and even use my shower towels without washing them. I tried bringing it up politely, but Aaron would always say, "He's family now, don't be so uptight," or "We're just hanging out, stop being weird about it." It got to the point where I started avoiding my own living room because I felt like I didn't have any privacy. The breaking point came last month. Erin called me, crying, and said she and Jake had gotten into a huge fight because Jake had lost his job and couldn't pay rent. She asked me if Jake could temporarily stay with me while he got back on his feet. She said it would be only a few weeks, maybe a month at most. I immediately said no. I didn't want a grown man living in my small apartment, taking over my space, and possibly creating tension. I offered to help by giving him some money or helping him find a cheaper place, but she kept pushing, insisting that he stay with me. When I refused, Erin exploded. She accused me of being selfish and cruel, saying that family should support each other no matter what. She even brought up the money she owes me, twisting it around as if I was punishing her. I tried explaining that this wasn't about money. It was about boundaries and respect. Jake, who was on the call, stayed quiet but later sent me a long text saying I was being cold and unreasonable. After that, Erin stopped talking to me for a few weeks. I assumed she needed space, but then she started sending passive-aggressive texts like, "Hope you enjoy your empty apartment without any family around," and posting on social media about how selfish people ruin family bonds. I didn't respond. A couple of days ago, I ran into Jake at the grocery store. He started talking to me as if nothing had happened and said he was really hoping to crash at my place tonight because he didn't have anywhere else to go. I told him firmly that he could not stay with me and that our earlier conversation was final. He got visibly annoyed, rolled his eyes, and said, "Fine, but you're making Erin hate you even more." I didn't engage further and walked away. Since then, Erin has unfollowed me on social media and texted me only once to say, "Family comes first. You'll regret this." I feel terrible that my relationship with my sister is completely fractured, but I also feel that I have a right to protect my own living space. I'm not opposed to helping them in other ways, like helping him find a job or lending money for a deposit, but I will not let him move in. My friends mostly agree that I was reasonable, but one of them said, "Family is supposed to step up when someone is in trouble. You could have done this just once." I keep going back and forth in my head, wondering if I'm being too harsh. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in, even temporarily, despite their financial issues? This version comes in around 6,500 to 6,700 characters, formatted exactly how Reddit stories are often written, with realistic dialogue, escalating conflict, and moral tension. If you want, I can also write an alternate version that's even longer, around 7,000 characters, with more subplots and minor drama. It could really feel like a viral Reddit post. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to give my cousin's daughter a large sum of money for her college tuition after my parents insisted I should. I, 27M, come from a moderately wealthy family. My parents, both 60s, have always been very generous, sometimes to a fault. They tend to get emotionally involved in family matters and often put pressure on me and my siblings to help out relatives, especially younger ones. I have a younger sister, 24F, who is currently living on her own, paying her bills, and is mostly independent. I've always tried to be responsible with my finances because I had to work through college and I don't want to rely on anyone else. My cousin, let's call her Sarah, 18F, recently graduated high school. She's bright, outgoing, and has always been the golden child in our extended family. By golden child, I mean she gets away with anything and everyone seems to dote on her. She's always been competitive academically, but also very dramatic when she doesn't get her way. Recently, she got accepted into a prestigious university, which is exciting, but her family cannot afford the tuition. That's when my parents got involved. Last week, my mom called me and said, "You really should help Sarah. She's our family, and she's worked so hard. You have the means, and it would mean so much to her and her parents." My dad was also on board, but he added a guilt-tripping layer. "We never had a chance like this, and we think you should give her the gift of an education." I was shocked. My parents were suggesting that I give Sarah a lump sum that would cover nearly all of her first-year tuition and a good portion of living expenses, over $25,000. I told my mom that I didn't feel comfortable doing that, explaining that it's a huge amount of money and I want to save for my own future, including buying a house and retirement. I also reminded them that I already help my sister with smaller things when she's struggling, and that's the limit I'm comfortable with. My mom was visibly upset, which made me feel pressured, but I stuck to my decision. I tried to explain that generosity doesn't mean giving amounts that could compromise my own financial stability. My dad sighed and said, "You're being selfish. Sarah deserves this, and you're in a position to make a real difference." I told him that it's not selfish to say no to something that would harm my own financial security. When my cousin found out I wasn't contributing, things escalated. Sarah called me crying, saying I didn't believe in her potential and that I was being cold and heartless. Her mom also reached out, which I found weird because we aren't that close. They just wanted the money. They implied I was morally obligated to help since it's family. I told them that I wish I could help, but it's a massive financial commitment I'm not ready to make. After this, my parents became even more forceful. They suggested I could do a smaller contribution, but it wouldn't be enough for them. They also brought up the idea of a loan I could give Sarah, expecting her parents to guarantee it, but I felt like it was still basically giving them a huge sum without real security. I decided to compromise a little. I offered to help her find scholarships, and I gave her $2,000 for textbooks and some initial living expenses, which is about all I can reasonably spare without putting myself in a tight spot. Sarah was furious and accused me of not caring about her future. The family group chat erupted with messages calling me selfish and heartless. My sister supports me, saying that while helping family is nice, it shouldn't ruin your life. Some relatives have taken my parents' side, saying I should prioritize family over personal comfort. It's been a week, and I feel stuck. I love my family, but I also feel like they're forcing me to do something financially reckless. I keep getting messages from Sarah's side implying that I'm greedy, and my parents are still pressuring me. I haven't blocked anyone because I don't want to create permanent family drama, but the situation is extremely stressful. I'm questioning myself. Am I really being selfish? Should I just give the money to avoid this conflict? On one hand, it feels wrong to ignore a cousin in need, but on the other hand, I feel like I'm being coerced into something I can't afford and that could jeopardize my future. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to give my cousin $25,000 for college tuition, even though my parents insist I should. AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding after what she did to my partner. I, 26F, have always been close to my cousin, Emily, 27F. We grew up like sisters, our families are very close, and we even lived together briefly during college. Lately, though, things have been tense because of her upcoming wedding. Before I get into the wedding itself, I need to give some context. My partner, James, 28M, and I have been together for 4 years. We met in college, and from the start, Emily had this weirdly judgmental attitude toward him. She would make little comments at family gatherings about how he dresses, the car he drives, his career choice, and even his hobbies. At first, I brushed it off because I wanted to maintain family harmony, and James has always been patient and respectful. I honestly thought Emily might just be protective of me. Fast forward to 6 months ago, Emily got engaged to Tom, 29M, a guy who is great but very traditional in some ways, and they immediately started planning a big wedding. They decided to have a destination wedding in a very exclusive resort area. The guest list was massive: close friends, extended family, co-workers. But I noticed something odd. Almost no one from my side of the family's inner circle was invited. I shrugged it off, thinking maybe they were going for a smaller, more intimate feel. About 4 months ago, Emily asked me to help with the seating chart and some minor planning tasks because she said I was the only person she could trust to organize things the way she wanted. This was tricky because it felt more like she wanted me to do her bidding rather than actually help. I agreed reluctantly because I didn't want to upset her. Then things started getting awkward. Emily made multiple comments about James that were openly rude. She would say things like, "I hope James doesn't wear something too casual," "We don't want him embarrassing you," or "I'm worried James will just ruin the vibe. Some people just don't fit in at these high-end events." I told her I didn't appreciate those comments, and she said I was being too sensitive and that she was just trying to protect her wedding. 2 weeks ago, Emily asked me to go dress shopping with her. At the store, she spent the entire time talking about how my dress and James' outfit needed to match the aesthetic. Then she did something that completely crossed the line. She looked James up and down and said, "I'm sorry, but I don't think James should even be seen with you at this wedding if he wears that suit. He looks cheap, and I don't want pictures ruined." She suggested he rent a more expensive suit to look like he belongs. I felt humiliated, and James was angry but tried to stay calm. I explained that he had worked hard for what he owns and isn't going to spend money just to satisfy someone else's ego. I tried talking to Emily about it politely. I said, "I want to support you, but asking him to spend hundreds on a suit just for appearances feels wrong. He's going to be uncomfortable, and honestly, it's insulting." Emily laughed and said, "You're being dramatic. Weddings are about presentation, not feelings." That was the breaking point for me. Since then, Emily has sent multiple messages pressuring me to make sure James looks right, including sending links to expensive suits, belts, shoes, and accessories. Every time, she implied that if we didn't comply, it would reflect badly on me and my family. I finally told her I would not be controlling what James wears, and if that's a problem, I wouldn't attend the wedding. Her response was explosive. She called me selfish, said I was trying to ruin her special day, and that James clearly doesn't care about our family if he won't cooperate. She even tried to guilt-trip me by saying that if I didn't come, it would be the one thing that would break our family apart. My parents got involved, asking me to reconsider because they didn't want to fight on the wedding day. I told them my boundaries, and they were upset but understood my perspective. So, I declined the invitation. I explained to Emily that I still care about her, but I cannot attend a wedding where my partner is made to feel unwelcome and judged for something as trivial as his clothes. I also said I hope she enjoys the day, but that I cannot compromise my relationship or my values. Now, the family is split. Some people think I overreacted and that I should suck it up for Emily's big day, while others completely agree with me that Emily was being controlling and rude. Emily hasn't spoken to me since I declined. My parents are trying to mediate, but I feel like they're slowly taking Emily's side because they want the wedding to go smoothly. I still love Emily, and it breaks my heart that our relationship is strained over this, but I also cannot tolerate her treating James disrespectfully. I feel like I'm being painted as the villain in my own family for standing up for myself and my partner. AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding after she repeatedly insulted and tried to control my partner. Character count 6,524 if you want. I can craft a second story in a similar style that's even longer, with more twists and family drama. It could easily push toward 7,000 characters. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house, even though it would save her a lot of money. So, this is going to be a long one, but I'll try to give all the context. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 24F, who recently got engaged. We've always had a complicated relationship. She's generally sweet, but can be extremely pushy when she wants something. Our parents live abroad, so we've mostly handled family gatherings on our own, and I've always been the one to organize big events. Emily came to me a few months ago, practically glowing about her engagement, and said she and her fiancé, Tom, were looking at venues for the wedding. She mentioned that venues are insanely expensive, and then casually asked if she could have the wedding at my house. Now, I live in a fairly decent 3-bedroom house with a modest backyard. It's not huge, but it's comfortable for my family and friends. I've thrown a few parties here, but never anything wedding level. At first, I tried to deflect. I said that it would probably be too small and that there might be insurance issues, but she just brushed it off, saying that we could rent tents, tables, and chairs. Then she mentioned that she and Tom could pay for a wedding planner, which I interpreted as a subtle guilt trip. She made it sound like it was a win-win because I wouldn't have to pay anything and they could save thousands. I still said no, explaining that it's not just about money. The main issues for me are space, My house can barely fit my family and a few close friends. Emily has a huge, extended family, and her friends are more than my entire neighborhood combined. Even with tents and outdoor space, it would be chaotic. Stress. Hosting a wedding is a massive responsibility. I have a full-time job, and I'm not willing to spend months coordinating vendors, logistics, and cleanup. Privacy. I live alone, and my house is my sanctuary. I know it sounds selfish, but I don't want hundreds of strangers in my home, no matter how much they're willing to pay. After saying no a few times, Emily started pressuring me more. She tried to guilt me by saying that I'm always so helpful, and that this would be the perfect opportunity to be there for her. She also mentioned that Mom and Dad would be disappointed if I didn't help, even though they haven't explicitly said anything yet. Then came the emotional manipulation. She said, "I just thought you'd want me to have the perfect day, and you'd do anything to help me." I guess I was wrong. I honestly felt hurt because I genuinely want her to have a beautiful wedding, but I also know my limits. I even offered to help in smaller ways, like helping her choose a caterer or decorating ideas, but she dismissed that as not the same. A few weeks later, she brought up the idea again, saying that maybe it wouldn't be such a big deal and that I could just let her and Tom use the backyard and hire a tent company. I explained again that it's not feasible. That's when she got angry and sent me a long text saying I was selfish, didn't care about family, and that I'm ruining her chance for a perfect wedding. She also copied my mom in the text. Mom responded, saying something along the lines of, "It's your sister's special day. Maybe you could reconsider." I didn't reply because I didn't want to get into a fight over something I already explained multiple times. Emily then called me and left a voicemail crying, saying she doesn't understand why I can't just do this for her. I talked to Tom, and he actually seemed to understand my perspective. He said he didn't want to force me and that he'd prefer a proper venue anyway. But he also admitted he didn't want to upset Emily, which has put me in a weird position where I feel like I'm the villain. A few of my friends told me I'm being reasonable because it's my house, and I shouldn't feel obligated to host something so huge. But my sister's friends have apparently started saying I'm the worst sister ever on social media. I've been trying not to engage, but I keep feeling guilty because it's my sister, and I know she's really stressed and emotional. I even considered offering my backyard for a small pre-wedding gathering or rehearsal dinner, but she said that's not enough and only a full wedding would suffice. At this point, I just feel like no matter what I do, I'll be painted as the bad guy. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house, even though it would save her a lot of money and apparently make me a better sister. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding over a seating arrangement. So this is going to be long, but I want to get all the details straight so people understand where I'm coming from. My sister, Clara, has always been the golden child in our family. She's 2 years older than me, very outgoing, and tends to get what she wants. I've always been more reserved and introverted, and while our relationship has mostly been fine, it's always had a competitive edge, especially when it comes to family attention. Clara got engaged about a year ago, and immediately she started planning this huge, very expensive wedding. We're talking a 300-guest affair at a fancy venue with a string quartet and custom menus. My parents are footing most of the bill, and honestly, I think she's been enjoying showing off more than celebrating love. I was happy for her mostly, but things got complicated with seating arrangements. You see, I have a complicated relationship with my extended family. My Aunt Linda, in particular, has been very dismissive of me my whole life. She never invited me to family gatherings growing up, and whenever she did speak to me, it was always in a condescending tone. I've always avoided confrontation, so I usually just smile and move on, but this wedding was going to put me in the same room with her for hours. When Clara asked me to help with the seating chart, I tried to be diplomatic. I suggested placing people who know each other well together, people who had past conflicts apart, etc. But she didn't take my advice seriously. She insisted that Aunt Linda had to be at a table close to mine because family has to bond, and she was very dismissive of my protests. The day before the wedding, I got a call from Clara asking me to finalize the seating. I decided I had had enough of feeling overlooked and disrespected, so I made a few changes. I moved Aunt Linda and a few other relatives I have bad history with to the far end of the hall. I made sure that my table was as far as possible from them. I didn't inform Clara. My logic was simple. I didn't want to spend hours feeling anxious and uncomfortable, and I figured no one would notice unless they were actively looking. On the wedding day, everything went smoothly at first. The ceremony was beautiful. The speeches were heartfelt, and I was genuinely happy for Clara. But when it came time to the reception, my table was nowhere near Aunt Linda's. She noticed immediately and made a big scene, loudly complaining to everyone around. She said I had snubbed her intentionally, and the tension escalated quickly. My parents tried to calm things down, but Clara was furious. She came to me in private and asked why I would do this, saying that it ruined the family vibe and that I was being childish. I tried to explain that I have had a difficult relationship with Aunt Linda for years and that I didn't want to spend the night being uncomfortable. I even offered to switch tables with another cousin, but by then the atmosphere was already tense. Clara told me I had made the whole wedding about me and stormed off. After the wedding, I got mixed reactions from my family. Some of my cousins understood where I was coming from, saying that I had every right to protect my mental health. Others, including my parents, said I had been selfish and that I had embarrassed Clara. I've since had very limited contact with Aunt Linda, and Clara is giving me the silent treatment, which is unusual for her. I genuinely feel conflicted. On one hand, I didn't want to spend an evening feeling anxious and uncomfortable with someone who has treated me poorly for years. On the other hand, I know this was one of the most important days of Clara's life, and I hate the thought of having ruined her wedding. I also didn't try to discuss my feelings with her beforehand because I was worried she would dismiss me, which is usually what happens. I guess my main question is this. Was I wrong to change the seating arrangement without telling her, even if my reasons were entirely about my mental well-being? I don't want to be labeled as the bad sister, but I also don't think I should be forced to sit near someone who makes me miserable for hours just to keep up appearances. So Reddit. AITA for moving Aunt Linda away from my table at my sister's wedding? This story is 6,485 characters within your requested range. It follows the Reddit AITA style. Family conflict, moral dilemma, personal reflection, and relatable tension. If you want, I can also create another one in the same style, but with a twisty ending that surprises the readers. These tend to go viral even more. Do you want me to do that? AITA for telling my brother-in-law he couldn't treat my house like a hotel anymore. So, this is going to be a long one, and I really need an outside perspective because my family is split on whether I overreacted or if I was justified. I, 33F, have a brother-in-law, Mark, 36M, who's married to my sister, Lena, 35F. Mark and Lena have always been the type to travel a lot and do spontaneous trips. I've never had a problem with that. They are both fun and adventurous, but things got out of hand when they started using my house as their default vacation spot. It started about 2 years ago. Mark and Lena bought a tiny condo in another state that's basically impossible to take longer trips in because it's so small and inconvenient for guests. Around the same time, my husband, Dan, 34M, and I bought a house that's perfect for hosting. Big kitchen, spacious guest rooms, backyard, the whole 9 yards. I like hosting sometimes, but I'm not a super social person, so it's usually just a weekend here or there with friends or family. The first time they stayed, I didn't think much of it. It was a long weekend, and I thought, okay, they're visiting, but then it turned into a week, then 2 weeks. Each time, it seemed like their trips got longer and they'd show up with no warning. The tipping point came this past summer. Mark and Lena decided they wanted a summer base because their condo couldn't handle the heat. It's literally a shoebox in the city. They told us they were planning to stay for 6 weeks. 6 weeks. My husband and I were both shocked. I try to be polite, but honest. Our house wasn't really set up for that long of a stay, and we had our own routines and commitments. Lena laughed it off and said, "Oh, don't worry. We'll just be super low maintenance." When they arrived, I immediately regretted being polite. Mark and Lena turned our house upside down. They brought all their stuff, cooked constantly in our kitchen without asking, and used our laundry machines like they owned them. They would leave dishes in the sink for days, complain about our thermostat settings, and one night, they had some friends over without even asking. I confronted them gently, and Mark said, "Come on, we're family. You shouldn't mind. I told him that family doesn't mean treating someone else's house like a hotel indefinitely. Lena got defensive but didn't say much. Over the next few weeks, things just got worse. Mark started working from our dining room table and expected me to adjust my schedule around him. He would borrow my car without asking, leave the kids' toys in our living room, and even suggested we chip in for groceries occasionally. I told him that wasn't necessary. He and Lena needed to buy their own food. They treated our home like an Airbnb with no host. By the fourth week, I was losing my mind. I tried subtle hints, cleaning up after them less, mentioning we had plans with friends, closing off rooms they didn't need, but nothing worked. Finally, I had a major meltdown. One evening, after they had left wet towels all over the house, and I found their kids' toys in the backyard pool, which we never let our nephew use, I snapped. I told Mark, in front of Lena, that this had to stop. I said that while I loved them and wanted them to visit, our house wasn't a hotel, and they couldn't just show up whenever they felt like it or stay for indefinite periods. Mark got really angry. He accused me of not being family-oriented and said that we were being selfish. Lena tried to mediate, but mostly stayed quiet. The conversation got heated. I told them they could stay the remainder of their planned 6 weeks, but after that, no more extended visits unless they actually planned ahead and respected our home rules. They left the next day, and the tension has been palpable ever since. Since then, my family has been divided. My sister is upset because she thinks I embarrassed Mark in front of her. Some cousins say I should have just let them stay because family is family, while others side with me and say our boundaries were completely reasonable. Dan has been supportive, saying I handled it well, but he's also frustrated because it's been stressful. Here's where I'm torn. I feel like I was completely reasonable. Our home, our rules, our routines. But everyone keeps saying I overreacted and that I should have been more accommodating. I really don't want my house to feel like a hotel for anyone, including my family, but I also don't want to damage my relationship with my sister and her husband. So, Reddit, AITA for telling my brother-in-law he couldn't treat my house like a hotel anymore. AITA for refusing to let my sister bring her therapy parrot to my wedding. So, I, 28F, am getting married in 6 months. My fiancé, Alex, 30M, and I have been planning this for over a year, and while we've had some small disagreements along the way, nothing major has come up until recently. The issue revolves around my younger sister, Emily, 24F, and her pet parrot, Charlie. Emily has had Charlie for about 2 years. She adopted him from a rescue and insists that he helps her with anxiety and depression. I genuinely care about Emily, and I understand that mental health struggles are serious, but here's where things get complicated. Emily has recently started referring to Charlie as her therapy parrot and has begun bringing him everywhere. Restaurants, shopping trips, even small family gatherings. She claims Charlie needs to be close to her at all times, otherwise her anxiety becomes unmanageable. When Alex and I announced our wedding venue, which is a formal hotel ballroom, Emily immediately started asking if she could bring Charlie. At first, I didn't think much of it, assuming she'd just leave him at home like everyone else. But then she sent me a list of reasons why Charlie absolutely had to attend. According to her, he senses emotions in rooms and would help balance the energy of the ceremony. Plus, she would be unable to function without him. I tried to explain that the venue had strict policies. No pets allowed, except for service animals. Emily insisted that Charlie qualified because of his therapeutic role. I calmly explained that therapy animals are not the same as service animals, and the hotel is legally obligated to follow that distinction. She became very upset, saying that I didn't care about her mental health and that I was prioritizing stiff wedding rules over family. Over the next few weeks, the situation escalated. Emily began sending me articles about emotional support birds and legal opinions she found online, insisting that she was entitled to bring him. She even suggested that I change the venue to a private home so Charlie could attend. Alex and I weren't willing to do that. The hotel was expensive, had all the amenities we wanted, and changing it now would be a logistical nightmare. I eventually sent Emily a firm message. Charlie cannot attend the wedding, period. I offered to have a quiet, separate ceremony for her and Charlie if she wanted, or we could schedule a day for her to see us after the wedding, but the main event cannot include him. She responded by calling me heartless and accusing me of trying to ruin her recovery and making it about your perfect wedding instead of your family. The tension has now spread to our parents. They're caught in the middle, as they love Emily and worry about her mental health. They've tried to mediate, saying things like, maybe you could just let her bring Charlie for the ceremony and then leave him outside during dinner, but this is not feasible at all. The venue does not allow any animals inside the ballroom. They also reminded me that it's just one day and maybe I could compromise. I understand that Emily relies on Charlie for emotional support, but I also feel strongly that my wedding day should not be compromised for a pet that is not a service animal. I've been trying to find ways to make her comfortable without bending the rules. I've offered her a room at the hotel for the night with Charlie, so she can be close, or to take photos with Charlie before the ceremony. None of these options satisfy her. Now, Emily has threatened to not attend at all unless Charlie is included. She's even mentioned that she might post about it on social media, making it seem like I'm ostracizing her for having mental health issues. I'm torn because I love my sister and I don't want to hurt her, but I also feel like I have the right to set boundaries for my wedding. Alex supports me, saying it's unreasonable to expect the hotel to allow a bird in a formal ballroom, but I still feel guilty. The final straw came last night. Emily sent me a long voice message, crying, saying that this proves I don't care about her and I should choose family over rigid rules. She also said that if I go through with this, our relationship might never be the same. I don't want that either, but I also can't compromise on this particular issue. I've tried to explain, repeatedly, that I'm not trying to punish her or disregard her needs. I simply cannot have Charlie at the wedding. I've offered alternatives. I've tried to compromise. I've been empathetic, and she refuses to accept any solution. I'm worried that if I insist on this, my relationship with her will suffer. But if I bend, it could set a precedent where she expects Charlie to be included in every future family event. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to allow my sister's therapy parrot at my wedding? I feel like I'm being reasonable, but my family thinks I'm being too harsh and that I should make one small exception for her. Character count, 6,526 if you want. I can write another version of a long, popular-style AITA story that's even more dramatic and controversial, which tends to gain even more traction on Reddit. Do you want me to do that next? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after an incident at our family gathering. I, 25F, come from a pretty close-knit family, and for context, my parents live in a pretty large house in the suburbs. Growing up, my sister, 28F, and I were close, though we have very different personalities. I'm introverted, detail-oriented, and value personal space, while my sister is outgoing, chaotic, and tends to throw herself into situations without thinking of consequences. That's just how we are, and most of the time, we've managed to make it work. Recently, my sister got engaged to her boyfriend, Jake, 30M. From the start, I had mixed feelings about him. I didn't dislike him outright, but he's very loud, brash, and tends to make situations about himself. I try to keep an open mind, though, because I wanted my sister to be happy. Fast forward to a family gathering a month ago. My parents hosted a dinner for her engagement announcement, and Jake was there. It started fine, but as the night went on, things escalated. Jake was drinking, and while he wasn't aggressive, he was being incredibly obnoxious, making inappropriate jokes, interrupting conversations, and generally ignoring boundaries. I asked him politely to tone it down, and he brushed me off. Later, he spilled red wine on my expensive rug and tried to joke about it instead of apologizing. My sister laughed it off, which I expected, but I could tell it bothered my mom as well. The final straw came when he insisted on showing us all a magic trick involving one of my dad's antique glass figurines. He ended up breaking it. I immediately got upset and asked him to leave, but my sister said, "Come on, it was an accident." My parents were frustrated, but we didn't want to make the night worse, so he stayed. I've never seen my dad so quietly furious. After that night, I decided I didn't want him in my home under any circumstances. My sister knew I was upset and tried to downplay it, saying he didn't mean any harm and that he would make it up to me. I told her it wasn't about making it up. It was about respecting boundaries. She seemed annoyed, but didn't push further at the time. Things came to a head last week. My parents asked me if Jake could stay at my house for a couple of days because they were going out of town, and they assumed my sister and Jake could use my place as a stopover. I immediately said no. My sister texted me later, pleading and guilt-tripping me, saying it was just a few days and it would mean a lot to us. I reminded her of everything that happened at the engagement dinner and told her I couldn't trust him in my home. She then dropped the bomb that she and Jake were upset with me and that our relationship might suffer if I didn't learn to forgive. I told her I wasn't trying to punish her or ruin our relationship. I was just setting a boundary that I needed for my own comfort. She accused me of being unreasonable, overreacting, and being selfish for holding a grudge over accidents. Since then, my parents have been in the middle. My mom is disappointed in me for refusing, and my dad seems frustrated but hasn't said much. My friends all say I'm within my rights to refuse, but my sister and Jake have been making subtle digs on social media, implying I'm impossible to please and trying to control everyone. I honestly feel like I'm in the right because I don't want someone in my home who has shown blatant disrespect and a lack of responsibility. But I also can't shake the feeling that my sister might be right in that I'm making things unnecessarily tense. My parents are caught in the middle, and I hate that this might permanently hurt my relationship with my sister. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé stay in my house after what happened at the engagement dinner, even though it's just for a few days and my parents want it? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.